Hi everyone, welcome to Living La Vita Loca podcast, a retro gaming podcast for some of your retro gaming needs. My name is Fazz.
And I'm Rich, and I'm going to be doing as little talking as possible.
That's fair. That's okay. That's good for a podcast, isn't it?
Cheating.
Luckily, you are exactly. You're cheating. Yeah. You brought in your tag team partner from
star player.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, sass.
In off
Fiona.
the bench.
Fresh legs on the
pitch. I'm not doing any fucking jogging. Jesus. So
I watch sports.
I know what a sport is.
I mean, I watch sports, and even then, I'm like, that sounded, it was really convincing. It was good. Yeah.
No, I believed it.
I got G'd up. I was like,
maybe we can win this.
So this is technically one of our free play fortnightlies, not fortnightlies. I can't even say the word fork lightning. And yeah, so I've got a free play game to reveal and play, but Rich Cheating has already revealed his hand to me, which is that Fiona is going to review.
She's going to
review the entire trilogy of Mass Effect, which is extremely exciting.
Yeah.
So I think that you're welcome to kick off and take as long as you want. We could be here till midnight. I'm really excited about hearing about.
You know what happens when you say that?
Yeah, no, it's fine. No,
I've got work in the morning.
I've not played any Mass Effect, so you can say what you want. I'll just say yes. I agree. So, Fiona, tell us all about you. Is it the first time you played it through then, or is it?
So no, I did play it. So it's a trilogy, and I played it originally. I played most of it a few years after it came out, and then on the third one there was a bit that kind of really wanted you to be playing multiplayer, and by that point no one else really was. So I just played it a little too late. But unfortunately, it was quite critical that you did the multiplayer, so I just sort of went and wandered off.
I've got a little question about co-op campaign playing.
Okay.
Actually, it's really handy.
But
Well, no, that's okay, because Rich kind of you did sort of key me up a little bit before the podcast in the last 2 minutes to sort of say that there isn't really a co-op campaign in Mass Effect, but interesting that you can't really play the third one without it, but
you can now.
You can now, right? Okay, that's it. Yeah. I mean, it's good that they at least went and retconned that to the point where they were like, this game's unplayable, so...
Good luck.
Yeah. Cool, okay, carry on.
Okay, so Mass Effect, I've got my little bit of information that I Wikipedia'd for you.
More prepared than I usually am.
Because you tell people to go away. You're like, go and do it yourself.
You're on the internet already.
This podcast is a real
I respect people's time. I respect people's time, Fazz.
Educate and entertain, is that not it?
No.
It's why they get funded by taxpayers.
Oh.
So, Mass Effect, the original trilogy started in 2007. The last one came out in 2012. And then in 2021 they released what I'm reviewing for you now, which is the Legendary Edition, which is everything. It's all three. They've given them a bit of a facelift, in particular the first one, and it's got all the DLC in it as well, so you've got some kind of quality of life upgrade stuff. You carry your same character, or you can do, through the whole lot. So this was a problem because by the time they got to Mass Effect 3, they were better at faces and hairdos than they were in Mass Effect the first.
Okay.
So again, like stuff like that, because it's all packaged together, you can kind of keep the same face throughout, whereas it was a bit more difficult, I think, the first time round. And do you know what? Great loading times. I mention that only because in Mass Effect 1 it was famous for having loading screens hidden by long lift journeys where your characters would all have a long conversation, which I very vividly remember from the first time round. And then to the point where the game actually, by the time it gets to Mass Effect 3, is taking the piss out of itself, and even the characters are sort of like, haha, I remember when we all stood around talking in lifts for ages. But on the PS5 it is just boom, you're there. And also it's often on sale, which is why I picked it up. So
does that not remove something then? Because surely, like you said, the conversations are the lift journeys in the first game. Do you not need to, if you've not played it before, do you not need to then listen to those cutscenes, or is that just...
They're not essential.
Okay.
They're just little character-y bits and bobs. And I
that's
think
cool.
you can stand still. I can't remember. I didn't.
These guys.
So, in Mass Effect, you are very much in the business of saving the universe. You play as Commander Shephard, and one of the reasons I picked this at the first time round was because you can actually play as a female or male Commander Shephard. This has gotten around by nobody saying your name. Even if you're romancing them, the characters will be like, "Oh, Shepherd," and you're like, "Yes." We're not at that first name stage. Come to my room. So yeah, they do that, and all the dialogue is pretty much the same. You just get to wear a slightly different face and have slightly different bulges in your armour depending on who you pick. You get to personalise your face, you get to personalise kind of your hair, like what you look like, and you get to pick like a background, and you also get to pick like a class. So it's a little RPG-ish in that you've got, I think, maybe 5 or 6 different classes that determine the various fighting styles you're going to be using. So in broad strokes, there's kind of 3 things that you'll use. There's like weapons, which is your general array of everything from like a shotgun to a pistol and a sniper rifle. There's tech abilities, which are largely to do with things like, in the first couple of games, hacking a little bit, but mostly later on it's things to do with, do you want to have a great big artificial intelligence drone that goes and just like shoots people for you, and some, you know, synthetic like hologram armor. And the other thing you've got is biotics, which is you know, sci-fi implants that mean you can do basically space magic. It's space magic. You can throw people across the room, you can rip them apart. In my case, you can do a thing where you rush up to them in like lightning speed and just sock them in the face very, very quickly, which is very satisfying. So your class at the start leans you towards kind of a couple of these things.
When you say at the start, you mean like right at the start of the trilogy? Like, as in, like, obviously you say you keep the same character, but do you keep all the same skill sets and stuff?
No, you can absolutely respec at the start of each one.
All right, okay, cool.
So you could also change the way you look if you wanted to as well. But the reason that you carry the same character through is because the big thing about Mass Effect, famously, is that the story weaves together through all the 3 of them. So choices that you make in the first one will then play out a bit in the second and third ones.
Yeah.
So I think it was quite a sort of trailblazer in that regard. I'm not sure there's much like it, to be honest, that really does that over such a long period of time. Even now, I'm struggling to think of anything.
Yeah, there was definitely like things like The Walking Dead and the Telltale games and stuff like that in that era, but like even then they were much smaller, self-contained episodes that you'd, you know, have a bit of a knock-on effect. I would hesitate to point at a series of AAA games that did something like that.
How much do they have a Mass Effect? Like, as in you know, I obviously never played the series, but it's so big, and you know, like, as in, and you hear about it all the time and things, and I obviously I've heard, you know, great things about how much it affects your story and stuff. But how much does it generally do that? Is it like, are you kind of breathtakingly good, or is it just sort of like, oh, you know, that this person that I had a romantic relationship, they remembered me from, you know, because I can do that from, you know, 10 years ago and stuff. Like, is it do they have a real impact?
Yeah, I'd say so. So I think when I think of that sort of, you know, there's a big choice, I often think of like your sort of Skyrims or your Fallouts, where it can often kind of come down to like, do you side with the red team or the blue team? You know, like, and there is a bit of a knock on, but it feels quite binary, and it feels like there's not a right answer. This one, I mean, there are some smaller choices you get to make. Like, I think at one point I got to choose whether to talk a guy out of having more drinks or not when he looked like he was a bit too far gone. But, you know, sometimes there are these huge moral choices like that determine the fate of a race, or in a lot of cases, very famously as well, you can get a lot of your crew members killed, and sometimes you can do it yourself. And, you know, sometimes it is a small choice, like, you know, do I want to encourage this crew member to get it on with a sexy robot lady? Like, you know, there's a lot of different ones, but they do...
It's never not yes, right?
Standard office.
You've got to try these things out, haven't you? But yeah, they do have huge ramifications. One of the best things that I enjoyed, because I really like that kind of sliding doors thing, was finding out afterwards what the other options would have played out like. And again, in kind of a first for me, I've actually gone back and started to play it again, but not from the start because I haven't got time for that. I've got a job. But I've gone back into Mass Effect 3 and done a completely new character.
Okay.
Another good thing that this set of games has that I think might have been there originally, I'm not sure if this is a new thing for the Legendary version, but at the start of 2 and 3, you can go through a comic book version of what's happened so far.
Oh, cool.
If you don't import your character. So if you're wanting to start afresh and do a different take on it, or if you're just starting and you don't have a save but you played them before a few years ago, you can go through this comic book and at various points it'll pause and go, so I decided to, and then you've got sort of options. So it's not as detailed
really cool.
as playing the main thing.
I like that they've done that.
But it is cool. Yeah. So yeah, looking at the other options is really good fun.
Just shows a bit of care for the gamer. Like, isn't, do you know what I mean, as well? It's like you might be in that position where you're like, I haven't played this for ages or whatever, or, you know, I do want to start a new character. It's just like, it's just nice for, you know, a game to actually consider your time and think that, you know, you might not have just played all three of them.
Yeah, absolutely. So how I thought I'd take you through them is I'd go through each of them, but because we all have places to be.
Just like bed.
Yeah. We're all getting on.
I can take work off tomorrow. It's fine.
Oh, nice for you.
No, well done. No, I can't. But like, as in, I will. Like,
So yeah, I'll take you through all three, but I'm not going to do too much in each of them. But I will kind of cover like a basic what's going on in this one, a bit about the gameplay, a bit about the characters, and a bit about like the kind of moral choice stuff. I'm going to try and avoid spoilers because it's such a big deal.
Sorry, very very quick question. Are you scoring each game individually, or are you going to be scoring the trilogy as like a whole?
You're scoring it, right? Free play fortnightly.
All right. Am I scoring each game individually, or am I scoring the game as a trilogy?
That's kind of up to you. I think I was probably gonna.
Fazz, am I scoring individually, or?
I just thought I'd get you, you know, like make you have to like really focus.
If I wanted indecisiveness and lack of clear direction, I would go to work.
I think because it's a legendary edition, just call it the whole
package.
The whole thing.
Okay.
Right.
So
the whole bulge, the whole armour bulge.
let's go back to where it all began. It's 2007. This is Mass Effect 1. You are Commander Shephard, space hero, and
space hero. It's such a generic term for something, isn't it? Just like...
Well, this is what I quite like about Mass Effect. It does really have that like sci-fi space opera kind of thing, and it's also bright space as well. Do you know a lot of games now are sort of a bit murky? Do you know, like it's space but everyone's miserable, or it's space but everything's beige? I work. I have like a job I have to do. I have boring adult things like going to the supermarket. I don't want beige space. I want like, you know, shiny lasers
like
that make a sound although they shouldn't, and you know, like
that's like, and it's been mentioned a couple of times. That's more space opera and more exciting. And
you want space opera.
You want to live in that world. Well, that space. You want to you want to live there more than you do like the dreary, sad part of it. Like, there's enough of that here. But it's just like...
So yeah, unlike my normal routine job, I am now Commander Shephard.
Excellent.
And yeah, whatever background you choose, you're kind of already a bit of a legend in the Earth space military. And I didn't even check this bit before I came here. However many hours, and I don't know what they are. The Alliance. You're the Alliance.
Yeah. It's better this way.
You touch a space thing in that way that you just shouldn't. You know, you see a kind of glowy beacon thing, you're like...
You think they'd have procedures for that?
Well, they probably do now. It's called the Shepherd Protocol. Don't fucking touch it. You get some kind of like an eldritch voicemail, basically, from a dead race.
Brilliant.
And then you head off around the galaxy trying to prevent an invasion of some kind. That's essentially... in a nutshell, a very reductive
I really
version.
hope it was on the design documents as an eldritch voicemail.
So yes.
It's the only thing we could describe it as.
I mean, it's pretty apt.
So your gameplay is quite straightforward. You are running around shooting baddies in the face. You, depending on what class you picked, you might be using more of your weapons, you might be using more of your sort of techie skills or your biotic skills. You can hack through a a laughable mini game that's basically like, what's that game where you have to bop it, where you have to sort of like
bop it,
see
flip
a thing
it, push
happen
it, pull
and
it.
press the relevant button. It's that kind of thing. It's barely a mini game.
Fucking
You might as well
bop
just
it.
not do it. And you also then get like a rudimentary skill tree, which isn't really a tree as such. It's more like a set of abilities linked to your class. Yeah, like a list, and then you can like assign points to different ones of those. So I ended up getting really, really good at pistols to the point where I was just like walking through everything like a Terminator, just like sort of stomping forward when they couldn't even touch me with their bullets and just like one-shotting them in the head. Because I played it on easy, which I would also recommend because...
Power trip.
Well, it is overpowered, but also, like, if there's one genre where you want to be overpowered, it's when you're the super space hero saving the galaxy.
You're already that person anyway. Yeah, that makes sense.
Exactly.
Yeah, you may as well be an absolute badass because it's told you that you meant to be.
Yeah. And you have a squad. More on those later. But you can always select 2 to go on your missions with you, and that's kind of it. So, again, quite a classic RPG thing where you've got potentially a big party, but you would select 2 at a time to go and do whatever thing it is you're off to do. In between times, you're on your ship called the Normandy, and you can use the space map to go and like travel between planets with different missions. And some of those are main missions, some of those are side quests. It's actually quite short if you don't side quest. I think I ended up doing about 14 or 15 hours, and that was because I was just rampaging through it. I did do a few
Would you
side quests.
pistol in people's face?
Yeah. It's very, like, of its age in the way that the side quests, in particular, are the same set of boxy rooms. It's got that... I've seen it in a few sort of spacey settings recently where... I think Outer Worlds is one of them, where you've gone to space and everyone's setting up in kind of fancy cargo containers almost, because
like
that's the easy way... prefab stuff, that's exactly it. A lot of your side quests are go to a planet... drive the worst vehicle in video gaming history, the Mako, like... Oh my
the Mako?
God, it's just like a sort of... In fact, you know what it looks like? A Cybertruck. That's kind of what... That sort of shape. And it's got like, I don't know, 6 or 8 wheels, I don't care. And it bounces along, it flips over easily, it's...
Are you saying that they should have, considering the advance as far as they have in the universe at this point, they should have better fucking wheels? That is in just like...
I'm just saying, land it closer, Shephard. Why are you always landing? Why are you always landing so far away in your terrible transport when you've got this beautiful spaceship?
That must be an active decision as well. Like, oh no, don't worry about it. We'll just put it down here.
I don't know what it is. Like, do they get like, you know, points towards some kind of like space glasses they can trade in at a space petrol station if they have miles? Like, that's a really old joke.
Yeah, wow. That's, get points on your card every time you fill up the Mako.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. It's probably some kind of like expensive scam, but yeah, you go into a few boxy rooms, you shoot a few baddies, you come out, mission done. They're not that great, and I think it is difficult, isn't it, with like side quests, because ultimately they're always go here, do a thing. It's either kill a person or find a thing, isn't it, and then come back, and they live or die on how good the trappings of that are. And actually with this one, not so good. There was one where I've written down, why is Super Commander Shephard picking up space monkeys? Because at one point, I think a space monkey, like, I don't know, takes your keys or something. It's not takes your keys, it takes some important secret documents or something, and you have to go and find the monkey. So you're just running around this like thing of weird space monkey / lemurs and just sort of clicking on them. And because it's a bit old, they're not even animating you like picking them up comically and looking at them. You're just like, no, not that one, not that one, not that one either. The other thing is the villains are a little bit Scooby-Doo. There's one set of villains called Husks, and they're theoretically really creepy because these baddies are like sucking the energy out of humans and turning them into these like zombie things with scary like eerie blue eyes.
We hate having things sucked out of us. It's like dementors and stuff, like, as in, you know, like it's the scariest thing ever for humans. Like, as in, you know, worse than just being decimated, I think. Yeah, and they're really creepy the first time you see them, because you see them in a bit of a cutscene, I think, first of all, like being made on these weird sort of needles that they're put on, and just you know, there's this moment of horror of like, oh god, what's happening to these poor colonists, and then you see them going towards you, and
do you know, like Scooby-Doo, right? When people are creeping in that sort of era of cartoon, and they've got their hands up like a T-Rex, and they're just like, you know, kind of lifting the legs up really high. That's how they run. And it's not fast either.
That's how they roll. That's how they roll.
And it's just not very scary. It's just kind of...
It's always the colonists that get destroyed, isn't it, as well? Like, as in, you know, like, as in, every game, you just hear about it in like some sort of like prologue or something. It's like, the colonists got fucked again. And it's like, oh, right, okay, great.
It's a bit of a running theme. They do not do well in Mass Effect.
And it's like, so who wants to be a colonist? No, absolutely nobody.
No daughter of mine will be a colonist, etc., etc.
So that's kind of the gameplay in a nutshell. You do have to choose your kind of posse carefully, because their skills sometimes will stack with yours to allow you to do things like unlock harder boxes or hack better, which is kind of annoying if you don't like the characters that have those skills, which brings me on to characters. So the characters, I think, are the really big thing about Mass Effect. Your crew through the 3 there's a lot of changing faces, but they're all quite good characters, I think, whether you like them or not. I've written characters aka the Shag, Marry, Avoid list, because again, you've got quite a few options for romance, less so in the first game, but this is definitely like that sort of RPG game where that's a big part of it if you want it. To the extent where like everyone's quite horny for Shephard. Like
big damn space hero.
Well, I don't know, it's kind of a bit off-putting sometimes, isn't it? And it's not the only game I found it in where, like...
I just wanted to check my voicemail.
Well, everyone's just, like, instantly, oh, you're Commander Shephard, let me throw myself at you, and you're sort of like, we had one conversation.
last week.
Yeah.
I feel like, does that not just have to be the way because you are the protagonist? Do you know what I mean? So therefore, like, to see the game mechanics play out, that is of the different types of romance that you could have, most of it would be an interaction with you as the player and therefore Shephard. Like, as in, do you know what I mean? Like, it's hard. I feel like as a game developer, it's difficult to go, look at all the different things we could do, but that's like a side story that you'd have to always be there for it or be those people.
No,
I don't know. That's just what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I think my problem with Mass Effect 1 is that you've only got 3 options, which is really only 2 options. So whatever gender you are, there's your opposite gender. There's a human option. And then there's Liara, who is like a race called an Asari, which is basically like a sexy blue lady. And she'll have either Shephard. She's just excited to be here. I think this is what the later games, and I'll probably mention this later, but the later games I think do it better because it feels a bit more like the characters are choosing and you have more conversations. Whereas the first one, it feels like at one point, so Caden, who I've described here as the space albatross around my space neck, he's like the male option, and he's just the most boring character. You might get a lot of hate for this, I don't know. But he's the most boring character I've ever come across.
I don't care. Like, he is boring.
Well, he's written to be
if
like
we
a
get
thoroughly...
some hate, it's a win.
They're kind of designing to be like a thoroughly nice and decent guy, but it's just quite dull.
No one wants that in a game.
It's just a bit like, okay, Caden, I get that you're very caring, but also, like, you know, look at me shoot this guy in the face with one shot. Yeah, and I had this one conversation with him where I thought I was just being a good boss and just asking him about his life, and then suddenly it was like, but we could be more than friends, and I was like, oh no, now I'm a walking HR violation. Backpedal.
Sounds like he is, actually. He should have been reading his email. Unbelievable.
Yeah, it's just a bit full on very quickly. So I think for me that it was just that sort of feeling that they were like instantly like, hello, Commander Shephard, and it was like, you literally don't know my first name. Like, why are we here?
I just came in for some noodles. And what's going on?
I was just asking if you were ready for your end of year review. Jesus, Caden. Yeah, so it's a bit weird, but the other characters are very, very good. There's Garrus, who's like a sort of sniper, who's like kind of a wisecracking. I don't even know what you describe a Turian as, like a...
You're on the internet, Google it. You'll be fine.
They've got these weird sort of like, almost like a craggy, like, face carapace thing.
Okay.
I don't know, you'll have to look it up.
Is it fleshy? Is it scaly? Who knows?
Well, Commander Shephard knows, but
Well,
you
yeah,
know,
that's
the
true.
rest of us don't. There's Rex, who's like a sort of, you know, your sort of classic warrior barbarian type who just like loves battle and today is a good day to die kind of vibe, that kind of thing. And there's Charlie as well, who's like a tech expert, who's like determined to prove herself on her first mission away from home. So you've got like quite a solid crew of like characters who have some genuinely quite funny dialogue on occasion, which is really nice. And you've got your moral choices. So Mass Effect 1 kind of introduces the way it's going to run for the whole series. You've got Paragon and Renegade points. Do you want to guess what those are?
No pressure.
Yeah, no.
Vocabulary test
Don't
time.
know what
Fazz.
Paragon is. Is that a type of Pokemon? And then a Renegade is just a fun little dude hanging out.
Okay.
Yeah, no.
little
What?
dude.
Yeah, well, you know, I don't know who to describe as a renegade. It sounds like, you know, somebody like one of the characters that was like you saying the war guy, like as in, you know, I have been listening, I just can't describe things right. You know, like as in doing whatever they want. So yeah, I guess renegade is probably kind of causing chaos and doing whatever you like. And Paragon would be the opposite of that because there has to be two.
Yeah. So
Got there in the end, nailed it.
Yeah. So like in broad strokes, like your Paragon is your kind of goody two shoes, sticks by the rules. Hearing it for like, you know, we want to bring everyone together. That kind of noble speech sort of hero archetype. And then the renegade is like still heroic, but very much getting shit done, taking no prisoners. You do it my way or the highway kind of thing.
Space Highway.
And you get like on your character screen, you get like a little sort of I was going to describe it as like, do you know when churches need new roofs and they got a thermometer? like
a fundraising thermometer.
Oh, right.
Yeah. I'm just really doing well with my
1995 called and they want their references back.
But either side of your face, and you've
No,
got
I've
like,
been stood there. Just going, oh!
and you've got like one either side of your face that shows you like your Paragon, your Renegade points. It's quite important. Hush you.
You could have just said it was a counter.
He's laughing at me saying a cool little dude point score. That's all.
I mean, I am having a lovely time.
Yeah, having a great time.
Yeah, it's great.
So yeah, you basically, it's the reason it's important though, and it does sort of box you in a little bit, is that the more of each side you get, it opens more dialogue options. So there will be some points where if you have a particularly high score in either of them, you get an extra dialogue option unlocked that will allow you to probably have a better outcome from a situation. So, you know, say somebody's arguing with you and they're ready to storm out of there, but you really need their cooperation. If you had kind of average points, you might just get two vague options of like, please help me, we're in this together, or no, you damn well do what I say. But then if you had very high Paragon points, you might get a really stirring option to convince them that will win them over.
Right, okay.
Or if it's really high Renegade options, it might be more like you're doing a really good kind of like intimidation option. It's like knock their heads against something hard to get them on your side.
Yeah.
So it's like a skill check basically. But you kind of can't get both. You're often choosing one or the other.
Yeah.
So you almost feel like if you start off and you're more Paragon, you sort of feel like you have to stay that way in case you get those choices, and vice versa. So for me, definitely, it felt a bit like I couldn't take the odd one just in case I needed those points later, which was a little limiting, but still good for characterisation, I guess. Yeah, moral choices. There's some big moral choices. You know, you can choose whether or not to recruit certain people. You can decide the fate of a race. You can definitely get your squad mates killed. This is my one spoiler. It's a spoiler for a very old game, but it's quite a famous one. But it does teach you really brutally that you can't win it all. There is a moment where one of your squad has to die, and it is very much your choice. This is why I called Caden the bloody albatross around my neck, because I saved him and that was the wrong decision.
Oh, no.
So yeah, but it does. So I think as an introduction, very, very good. Introduced a good kind of morality system. It's very basic gameplay. I don't think the side quests hold up very well at all. But I think this is one of those it walked so that the rest of the trilogy could run kind of things.
Okay. So, I'm quite aware that Mass Effect 2 is usually described as the best of the three, and I know you're about to go on to that. But my question would be around then. So, flipping back on, we're going to score it all together and stuff like that. But Mass Effect 1, that is in. So, how much was it walking so the rest could run? Do you know what I mean? Like, was it stumbling, or was it like, as in,
No,
like altogether in the package? Did it feel like the odd one out? That is in compared to 2 and 3.
Not with the updates. I think if you played it again on the original, probably it would feel more so. I think it was clear from what I remember of the first one, like how much of the visuals and stuff have been improved, and the kind of quality of life things about. There's something about your points scoring as well. They've changed that I couldn't bother to read, but felt better.
Didn't they like scale it so that it was more consistent across the games? It was like they had a different system between like 1 and then 2 and 3 or something like that, and they made it more consistent.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think.
Awesome.
So Mass Effect 2, genuinely like one of the hardest hitting game openings ever. Do you reckon?
Yeah, probably has a decent argument.
Yeah, it's quite a dramatic cinematic opening, and it kind of gives the most convincing reason possible for why you might want to change your face at the start.
It is pretty compelling.
So, very, very briefly, Shephard is given kind of a new command, so now working for a slightly shady, kind of almost human-centric organisation in this big galaxy called Cerberus, and has to find out why human colonies are going missing. It's always the colonies.
Son of a bitch.
It's always the colonies.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. So, gameplay bits that are different. You've got, space admin. Right, I do love this instalment, but space admin. So suddenly you get ammo clips that you have to refill. The first one was great. You just sort of like just fired it as much as you wanted, pretty much. You have to get fuel for your spaceship. I just assumed someone was doing that for me. I'm Commander Shephard.
That's how you get the little points for your glasses at the space petrol station.
That's true. And worst of all, you've got to scan planets for minerals now.
Oh, yeah.
You have to go and you have to wibble your joysticks around, and when it blips you can send a probe off and it goes sending probe, and you'll hear that about 1,000 times in the whole Mass Effect 2. And then you'll get a bit of Palladium.
For that.
Well, I've got a whole ship and they're literally all fucking standing there the whole time looking like idiots.
Just peering over your shoulder being like, oh, that could have gone left a bit. I think you've missed that one, Shepherd.
Yeah, no, I think they're all kind of, finding busy work to do when the boss is around is what's happening on that ship. Yes. You do get new Paragon Renegade stuff, so you can now do quick time events where you get on your kind of right trigger, sometimes it'll flash up on the screen to do like a Renegade kind of quick time event, and on the other one, I did forget the word for left, we'll go up the
right
Paragon
and not
option.
right.
Again, these aren't like at the same time or mutually exclusive, but just occasionally they'll come up, and if you select it, it'll kind of give you often like a bit of an interrupt or something.
Okay.
To sway the outcome.
Is that dependent on how would that not appear if you didn't have a certain number of points? If that makes sense.
You're going to ask that. I'm not actually sure. I think some of them might
just
not. I think
always
some of them
an
are just
option?
available.
I got the impression that they were for the most part, just kind of there.
Yeah.
But I do think that, considering how the story escalates, I think that there must be some that are locked off unless you've got at least a certain amount of points.
Yeah. My impression was the dialogue options where you've got your wheel of dialogue and you pick are the ones that are definitely locked off.
Okay.
And I felt that those ones were more like giving you points if you chose to take that route. There's a couple of great ones where there's one way a reporter can ask you a load of questions and you can either very professionally try and answer and help the galaxy understand what's going on, or you can just sock her in the jaw and walk off.
Nice.
Because you're Commander Shephard and you've got no time for this shit.
Yeah. It's the quickest option sometimes.
Well, yeah, I did regret not doing it, to be honest. But again, I was trying to get Paragon points. There's space lens flare everywhere.
Oh, God, yeah.
Space lens flare. Did you ever see the new Star Trek films?
Yes.
Yeah, just that lovely lens flare where you're like, space. This is the final frontier. Lens
J.J.
flare
Abrams
is everywhere.
loves lens flare. Loves it.
Oh, I can't fault it because it's such a style. It was great. They had it a bit in Mass Effect 1, I think, presumably not in the original. I imagine they patched that in. But it's definitely more more there and consistent in Mass
I
Effect
had a
2.
lens. That was about it.
Yeah.
Where's your flare?
I've written down nasty things about the cover system. It's kind of crap. So there's so many places. Mass Effect, it's very much, the whole series is very much that kind of, no one's even trying to hide the fact that these massive set of boxes spaced out in a room are going to be things that you're going to need to hide behind.
Yeah.
And you can hide behind them, but peeking out is a bit rubbish. It's a bit 50-50 as to whether it'll count you in cover when you're in cover. And also, for some reason, Shephard couldn't really vault boxes on her own. So she's crouched behind these tables. So rather than just jumping over the tables, she's got to crouch down first and then get over the table.
It's the momentum, surely. It's just like it's pure momentum. That's
I just undermined the sort of super space hero.
Yeah.
Do you know, like Han Solo didn't have to do this sort of stuff. You don't see Captain Marvel sort of like crouching down.
Maybe Shepherd's just got iffy knees or something. Has to build to it.
Maybe. Han Solo had a Wookiee to do it for him.
Yeah.
He never had to do it.
Across the room
Never
like
used
Chewbacca. I should have kept Caden around. There's a new kind of set of baddies. One of which is like, I don't want to explain too much what they are, but they're sort of almost like a hive mind. One of them that kind of can take over the body of one of the ones you're actually fighting.
Okay.
To make it a bit more buffed.
Oh, right.
But every time they do this, it's like, I'll attend to this personally, or something like that. And it just gives off this sort of weird, like, middle manager energy. Of like, Kevin's not meeting quota, I'll step in and deal with this. There's space fish. You get in your room.
You said that like it was a question. There's space fish.
Will there be space fish?
There are, and it took up an inordinate amount of my time. Again, like, I was just, I'm Commander Shephard. I'm facing down like a galactic level threat with very little resource, very little support from authorities. I'm having to do it myself with my small crew. Bad knees. Emails that could have been a phone call. Space admin in rocks. Like
probes to launch.
Exactly, and I'm also having to feed my own bloody fish, right? So this is I've got an aquarium in my room for reasons I don't understand. You can buy fish in various places on these planets you go to, so I did. But then you've got to go feed them every mission, or they die. But there is a perky yeoman called Kelly, who, if you chat to her nicely enough, she will agree to feed your fish for you. But again, you've got to tread quite a fine line between like chatting up and just being like, we're friends enough that you'll feed my fish. I didn't quite manage it, so I kind of rebuffed her too soon and had to keep going and feeding my fish. Even as the tension was escalating, it was like, Commander, we have to strike now. And I was like, yes, but my fish. Yeah.
So what, if she became a romantic interest, would she not feed your fish as well? Like, as in, would that become too much of a, like, as in, I don't know.
It's true, but I wasn't interested, Fazz, because I was locked in with the number one romantic option, who is Garrus, who is like the sniper guy, who is now available. So,
it's what everybody wanted.
It is what everybody wanted. I'm pretty sure literally
everybody wanted to be able to romance Garrus.
Oh, he's the best. So,
but if I got my fish fed, I'd be like, but how early do you know that you can? Yeah, I don't know. This is quarrel. This
is also internet known. This isn't, nothing in Mass Effect 2 actually says, oh, by the way, Commander, I'm Kelly, and if you're nice enough to me, I might feed your fish.
This is difficult.
Yeah. But you get a load more characters in Mass Effect 2 as well. And it's very character focused as well, which is really, really nice. I think that's why a lot of people like it so much. So the whole start of it is you pulling together your crew again after you kind of get re-recruited to this new organisation. You get a few familiar faces from your old crew, which is really nice, assuming they're alive. And you also get a new series of characters who, again, you might hate some of them, but I'd argue they're all quite well put together. There was another bloke who was clearly there as your love interest option, who was just, again, very boring. I don't know what it is about just normal human men that they're just like, I don't know, he likes stuff and things, he seems quite nice and decent and likes his family. I don't know.
Yeah, likes talking about carburettors.
We're just really easy to write for.
Yeah, but you do get many more options for kind of different types of romance as well. So I think if you want to play a gay Commander Shepherd, you're still a bit out of luck, I think, in this one. But you've got a couple more options for like female-female relationships, which is really cool. One of them is the lady who will feed your fish, should that tempt you.
It does.
So you've got a whole 9 romance options for the men, 8 for the ladies. The romance levels are varying as well. Some of them might be like proper relationships where you'll have several kind of moments with them, and then you'll get like a cutscene at the end, very very cheesy, kind of like before the final battle. It's like, let's spend one night together, who knows what tomorrow will bring. Or a couple of them can just be kind of more like flings, I think. But I do like that in this one the characters weren't just there to be there for you because you're the amazing Commander Shepherd. It felt like they had their own agenda, and also because there's so many options but a lot of them are not going to be interested in you based on your gender. That kind of felt a bit more realistic as well. And it's not like, I'm not saying it's super realistic in that you can go up to them and be like, hey Tali, nice sexy alien lady, and she'll be like, no thanks, I'm straight. That doesn't happen.
No.
It's just not an option at all in the dialogue, but it still feels a bit more
organic.
Yeah, a little bit, I think. I just think there's quite a lot of games where they either go all in and everyone's falling over themselves for you, or there's only like 2 options. Do you know? Like, it doesn't feel like there's a lot of things where it genuinely is quite in between. So I liked that. And the characters are really important because, again, the kind of big famous thing about Mass Effect 2 is that your crew's loyalty is really important to how well the ending goes and how many of them survive. That's not really a spoiler. I think that's
how many of your fish survive?
None of my fish did. I never got it on with Kelly, and I regret it. Not as much as my fish do. R.I.P. There is like a little death wall in Mass Effect 3 of all your crew that have died, and my fish never got put on there.
That's a shame.
It is a shame.
Feels like an oversight.
There were quite a lot of fish by the end there. So
the fish all make it. What really matters is that the fish all made it. Were they loyal to you? That's what matters.
Who am I even saving the world for?
Yeah, I know, exactly.
So
as long as it's not colonists, then they're fine.
So the characters all have these missions that are, sort of loyalty missions, really. They're the kind of personal things that they ask you to do, and you can choose to do them or not do them. And doing them and taking certain options within them, again, these morality choices, will help increase their loyalty. And there are some as well where there's a couple of pairs of crew members who have quite opposing ideologies and views on things, so you might find them in conflict occasionally. And again, if you've got really strong scores in your Paragon or Renegade, you might be able to talk them down, but if you haven't, you might just lose one of their loyalty altogether and have to pick a side. So stuff like that, again, really makes you engage with the characters. It makes the missions all really meaningful, even if they are, a veiled version of go and find this person, go and pick up this artifact. And they were really varied as well. There was one that was kind of Heart of Darkness-ish. There was one that was like stealing secrets with the spy, which was very cool. And there was one that was basically space lawyering, which was excellent.
Wait a minute, we were just ripping into space admin a minute ago, and now we're okay with the lawyering. It's okay.
You heard my Ace Attorney review. You know what I'm here for. My only regret is that I was wearing my spacesuit and I didn't get any kind of frills. So,
I'm sure there's a mod for that.
Probably is. So Paragon and Renegade really matter, and your moral choices are, again, quite big in this. If anything, they're a bit bigger. There's some really big ones about data that's unethically procured but might be useful to you. What are you going to do? You're going to hang on to it? Are you going to destroy it? Weapons as well that are really bad and evil, like made by the baddies, but do you try and keep them for yourself in case they're helpful against them? There's a lot of that stuff. And a lot of it isn't, Renegade isn't necessarily the bad guy option. It's more the option that's more pragmatic, I'd say, and like, I will do this at any cost. Again, a good system. And I think the reason so many people like it is because that character stuff is really, really good, and there's this big dramatic end mission where everyone's coming with you. You have to assign them roles, which again can go very badly, and there's real consequences at the end depending on who you manage to bring through with you, because it's no guarantee that all your crew are going to survive what happens at the end of it. So I think it's really good at
Can you get to the point where there's none alive at the end, just you?
No, not literally none, but nearly none.
Okay.
You can screw it up really badly, and you also, you do have a lot of stuff that kind of carries through, and the universe itself gets bigger. So in the first one, you were very much in kind of the more civilized parts of the galaxy. This one, it's implied because you're working with this organisation who's a bit shady, you're going into now different parts of the universe.
Okay.
And you're meeting different races as well. So there's kind of a core, maybe 4 or 5, like, big important space races who have seats on the kind of Alliance Council and stuff like that. And then in the second one, suddenly there's many more races that you start meeting as, like, side characters who are around the place. And I think my assumption is that this is because Mass Effect 1 didn't have the time or the money or the space on its CDs to do all this stuff. And I think Mass Effect 2 really does it well. They don't feel extra. They don't feel like surprise. They feel like, oh, they were there all along.
Yeah, we
it's
just
that you
couldn't
didn't
do
go
it.
to those places.
Yeah.
So it's a really, really smooth job of making a universe much bigger, but not making you feel like it's a surprise.
That's very clever. Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah, so that's Mass Effect 2. Questions?
Rich is like, no, I'm doing the least amount of work I possibly can. No, I'm good. Yeah, I'm really enjoying myself here, actually.
Okay.
It's nice, yeah. It's good.
That's good.
You need a break? You okay?
We're nearly there. So, Mass Effect 3, do you think things have gotten better or worse for the colonists, Fazz?
There is a graph for colonies destroyed over time, and I think it's probably exponentially shit. So, yeah, I'm going to say worse.
Yeah, worse. And also, Earth is in trouble, which is obviously the peak of every sort of like sci-fi thing where Earth is still a thing.
Is in trouble.
Yeah, when they get, exactly. Yeah, when they start breaking through. In fact, that happens every time, doesn't it? It's almost like, we'll just take it to Earth now. It's like,
Yeah.
Is it Halo 4? Will they do that? Yeah, I don't know. Anyway.
I feel like there's a huge list.
Yeah.
Absolutely. If you're not tapping off Earth and Earth exists in your universe, what are the stakes, really?
Yeah.
Low. Rubbish.
Unless
Might as
you're a
well be picking up
colonist.
monkeys. Unless you're a colonist. But screw those guys, they made their choice.
Has the Alien series ever come to Earth? I think that's
Does that
maybe.
exist?
I guess it depends on if you start counting like Alien versus Predator and stuff like that.
But I'm thinking like main without Predator. I can't think of any that have. I don't think been close to being on the spaceship to Earth. And then someone's like, beat the shit out of them. But sorry. Anyway, a side thought.
It's a good question.
Side quest.
And again, another one for your space bingo card is Shephard is by now basically the last hope of the galaxy for real. Must assemble like a ragtag alliance, another one for your space bingo card to save life as we know it across the universe.
Basically, you already got one to go if you did Mass Effect 2 okay, didn't you?
A space bingo card.
No, ragtag group of people.
Oh, right, yes.
I fully expect that there probably is one in this game, right? The bingo card.
You could probably do a lot of drinking games to Mass Effect and you would die horribly.
Every time someone says Shepherd.
Shepherd. Oh, man. So, yes, the gameplay, there's not a huge amount of changes in a lot of it. You do get this weird thing with your weapons where suddenly the weight of them matters. Which, basically I'm against all space admin. So now my space emails remain, unfortunately. There's still inexplicably somebody standing at my side, like in Mass Effect 2, whose sole job seems to be to say, Commander, there's a new message for you at private terminal. Great. Do you know, when I look at my emails, Kelly, and, whatever your other name is, Trainer, I also can spot that there is a new message waiting for me. There is a function for that.
Blinking light or something.
There's a blinking light too.
Oh, is there?
Yes.
Oh,
in Mass Effect 3 anyway.
AOL existed at this point. Why is that? It used to tell you.
I'm just saying,
You've got mail.
These PAs could be better repurposed to go and load my fuel.
Feed your fish.
Or catch our monkeys, whatever it is. Shepherd's a poor delegator is what I'm saying.
I was going to say it's on you. Yeah.
Where is your time best spent as a leader? She's never read management books. That silence. That is
in the middle of the floor. I don't know.
Have you?
I read one about some rats and cheese at some point. Anyway, it was. I don't think it went well for me or the rats.
Anyway, what I'm saying is basically I don't want to have to count the weight of my weapons. I don't care. I'm a space hero. I should get as many weapons as I want.
Also, if you're in space, won't the weight of the weapons change depending on the planet you're on?
I assume my suit compensates, probably. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
You would not get the job of the person stood beside Shephard helping him out. That's
Overqualified.
Too many questions there, Rich.
The running was a bit wibbly. I don't really know what I mean by that, but just there was something about the kind of camera. Do you know when the camera jolts a bit to make it look like you're running more than you are? And I just was like,
yeah.
I didn't need that.
The disdain on your face there. Just like running. Oh man, that's ridiculous bullshit. That is like.
I also have a confession that I wrote originally. The cover is terrible and the vaulting is terrible. And I got all the way through Mass Effect 3. And then I went into Mass Effect 3 again to play the more kind of renegade Shepherd, who I named Eve L. Shepherd.
Nice.
And then I started again, did the tutorial the first time again. And then it reminded me that you can actually double tap X to... Or not X, whatever it is.
Vaulty.
Yeah.
Quickie vaulty.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, well, I had ADHD and you didn't tell me that
You
well
only
enough.
told me once.
So
60
I
hours
went through
ago.
the whole of Mass Effect 3, like, going through as badass Commander Shephard in her final mission to save the world, and every time I fucking wanted to vault something or climb something, I had to crouch first, and then, like, swing my legs up onto it. I didn't need to. Which is my fault, but I still blame the game.
Yeah, no, definitely knock 7 marks off for that.
Yeah, it's a few gone. I'm going to add some back on there because you can punch things more in this. You could always melee a bit, but this gives you like a sort of biotic fueled punch where everything goes a bit blue and you just go vroom into someone's face. And I had a power that like enabled me to shoot across the room into them like a rugby tackle anyway, and then I could punch them. And it basically, by the end of the game, because I was on easy mode, I was running into these massive mechs and just like hitting them once basically with my forehead with this supercharged run, and then smacking them once, and they were just exploding, and I was like, yes, feel the power of Commander Shephard. Nothing stands in the way of my fist.
Is this Doom? You playing Doom? Feels like you're playing Doom.
Yeah, maybe like a cheerier Doom.
Yeah,
with
maybe
friends.
that's it.
A Doom where you actually have friends.
And lens flare.
Lens flare. I feel like there was lens flare in Doom. No. Not the original, obs. So yeah, there's still lots of stuff to do. It's not as space admin-y in some ways. You don't have to scan planets anymore, which is nice. But not for metals, but you do have to scan planets for people's shit that they left lying around. It's got a proper case of the Skyrims. Do you know, like, in Skyrim...
As soon as you said that, I was like, the Skyrims are definitely like a bad disease. I've got the Skyrims.
Can't come in today.
Yeah,
just Skyrims.
My horse is stuck halfway on the cliff. I've got a barrel on my head. People are stealing stuff from my shop. But specifically,
weighed down by cheese.
So it says,
it could be so many things.
Yeah.
You're right. It wasn't specific. But what I really meant by a case of the Skyrims. Is that thing where like every single person you meet has managed to lose an incredibly important artifact on the other side of the arse end of the galaxy, and you're like, if it was that important, why didn't you bring it with you when you evacuated? Why do I have to go and scan random planets to find your statue?
It's almost like a dad of two leaving a house key in the middle of Blackpool Pier. You know, that doesn't happen in real life. It doesn't happen in real life.
I mean, that's one thing, but then it's not like you're dispatching some kind of like highly decorated military hero on a very expensive ship to go and find it.
I was meaning to talk to you both about that.
This is like getting Neil Armstrong to go and get your Amazon locker delivery. A, you could and should do that, and B, he's definitely got better things to do. So yeah, space admin, but by a different name. And then I had a big problem with the map, because on the one hand, the map in Mass Effect 2 and 3 is beautiful, because when you go to these different planets, you're sort of in a nebula for some of them when you're travelling between systems, and they're like, it's proper like NASA photograph nebula.
Oh, really? Yeah, that's nice.
So it's all really pretty and kind of realistic, and sometimes you lose your ship because it's so realistic and the ship's so tiny you can't see which is the colour of the nebula and which is the colour of your ship, and then you run out of space fuel and it's bad news. But you have to go to all these places. But often when you're looking for someone's space junk, They don't...
Phrasing.
But enough about Garrus. I got there first.
You did get there first.
Good lord.
But yeah, there's like a whole thing where it tells you what system but not what planet, and the reason is because it wants you to scan the planets, because when you scan the planets, the bad guys who are Reapers, these scary aliens, might cotton onto your signals, so you've basically got a limited amount of scans before you tip them off. But it just means you're sort of like pootling around this little solar system in your spaceship, blipping out some scans, then having to like skedaddle off when these big scary spaceships come out with like a sound like the AOL engine whirring up. And again, like, you know, for those of you who don't know what dial-up is, I'm really sorry, but like that's the sound that the Reapers make.
I'm not. Jesus.
That's sort of like jarring noise that gets in your skull a little bit. It is a genuinely terrifying sound.
Danga.
Yeah, not quite that bad, but
okay.
Yeah, that sort of thing though, like it's that kind of like grating on your soul. Yeah,
kind of thing, isn't it? Like a foghorn.
Yeah. So yeah, the map isn't so great. The map also isn't so great for things like there's this place called the Citadel where a lot of stuff happens because it's the main place where everyone hangs out to sort of do diplomacy and sometimes punch reporters in the face. And when you go there, again, you've got to give these bits of space junk back to the people that you overheard needing them, and you can't find them. And I was just like, this was like hours ago. Like I can't even remember what race this person was I was looking for. And then again, very late into the game, I realised that my map had like people's names written on them, and I was supposed to like intuit that the people's names were people I had to go and talk to, which
So
is
the Marauder's map,
stupid.
like, isn't just wandering around. I mean, like, it's a little bit realistic that you can't kind of find them though. Like, I always think that it's really annoying in games where it's like, oh, this person sends you on this quest, and they're just still stood there about 6 hours later. They're just
They've got a big marker over their head.
Yeah.
yeah, I get that.
I don't know though. Like considering the size of the games and the fact that this is a re-release, like it seems like a good opportunity to kind of revisit how they mark all this stuff and tweak it a little bit. But
Yeah. I do think like as well, like the gameplay it felt a little more Mass Effect 1 in places, weirdly. And not in terms of clunkiness, but in terms of some of the side quests that are more side quests, do feel a bit more like, go here, do the thing. So a lot of them were in the same pattern of, go here, there's a wave of enemies, then you have to get to a big tower, which is either like, unjam the signal or fire up the big gun, and you leave one of your squad there to do that, and then you fire off another wave of enemies, and then you're basically done with the thing. And there were quite a few in the same mould. Which is it's fine, but you feel like you have to do all of these because another important part of the gameplay is building up your war arsenal.
Okay.
So a lot of that is the alliances that you build. So even the small side quests, you can get small groups of fighters who'll come and help you if you have given them their magical statue back or whatever it is. Very important statue to inspire their people or whatever.
Yeah.
And then and the big missions will get you like large squads and fleets and things like that. But if you basically the better you get, the more people you get behind you, the better outcome you're likely to have in the end. And this is where the online stuff I think used to come in. But you don't have that anymore, so you just do it yourself, and that's fine. Which is much better, I think. Your characters don't feel as involved, even though you've got even more romance options. You've got a whole 11 for the ladies and 12 for the men. But some of the kind of like fan favourites, I guess, from like Mass Effect 2 in particular, and the ones that have been with you right from the start.
They're all dead. Yeah.
Well, no, a lot of them are sidelined. There's some that come all the way through with you. There's a couple, but there's a couple that are like around but in like side missions and things, and I think that is because genuinely they could be dead.
They could yeah, exactly, yeah. Staying around Shephard's death sentence by the sound of things, so
so it's a shame, but it does mean that also some of them are really excellent to see again. Like some of them you don't realise how much you missed them, and then they come up and you're like, yeah, Rex, you're back, start smashing things up, this is great. So it was nice to see people, but like I kind of wanted my original crew back a bit more because I made the effort to like rescue most of them. Yeah, I'm going to come back to the DLC. But the moral choices and stuff, they differ in this one. So rather than your separate Paragon and Renegade, they stack up to make one big reputation score. So the way I understand it is your score is made up of just whatever Paragon and Renegade points you get, and it's your reputation score that is the check for things.
Right, okay.
So if people know about you enough, have heard about you doing enough missions or saving enough people or whatever it is, then you'll pass that check, whether it is kind of an intimidating one or more like a sort of charmy, everyone's in this together one. I actually saw that the game designers said that they designed it so you would never be the villain. They wanted it to be, even if you renegaded your way through, you were still feeling like you were a bit desperate and taking ruthless decisions, but you were still the hero of Earth. Yeah. So it's more like, in this one, the Renegade options tend to be more like Shephard is desperate to protect Earth at all costs, rather than necessarily everything else.
I was going to say, if you come into the end of the story and that's rounding on this idea of that you're trying to save your home planet, there's only so bad you can be. It's just like, oh yeah, Shepherd just saves always a massive dick. It's just like,
well, they can be there because, again, the one I'm doing now is I'm trying to go through as more of a renegade, and I find it genuinely difficult, which I think says a lot about how interesting the choices are. That some of the renegade options where you have to maybe lie to your party a little bit, or do something that's not in their interests, it's in your interests. You feel genuinely a bit torn. Yeah. If you've been through it with them and you're not naturally inclined to that sort of thing anyway. It's probably quite a good personality test. And there's huge consequences as well. So the more renegade you get as well, your face looks worse. There's a whole underlying reason why, but it's to do with an accident you were in and you had to... No, basically you don't heal as well. If you're taking more... I think it says about being stressed out and things like that. So you take more of the renegade options, your scars and wounds will open up a bit, which is kind of grim. But the biggest thing is you get these massive under-eye bags that look like me on Zoom a lot of the time in bad lighting.
Sorry, I've just been taking renegade decisions today.
It's what I'm going to go with.
And here's another one. Shut that up.
I'm having that one. And there are huge consequences here, obviously, for everything. So even things in Mass Effect 1 are still having an effect in Mass Effect 3. So, people that you helped out or didn't help out might pop up. You might get support at critical times or not. There's even, how easy it is to cure a terrible disease at one point is going to rest on some of the actions that you took or didn't take in earlier games. And you also get a nice DLC as well, which is really, really good. I mean, there's a lot of DLC, which I haven't talked about because, I've already talked for all your podcasts.
It's felt very easy this week.
But the DLC that's the best, because it probably is some of the best DLC I've played in anything, is the Citadel DLC, which was done as a bit of an apology for an ending that I'll talk about in a second, because it was divisive. But basically, in all this space and misery where things are getting worse and worse and worse and decisions getting harder and harder and harder and your enemy seems, ever more insurmountable, for some reason, your old boss gives you a bachelor pad that they've got in, the downtown of this big space citadel place. And it's sort of like this neon-lit, very kind of Blade Runner-esque place where there's, casinos and things like that. And there's a sinister but ultimately quite silly plot about someone trying to kill you that is brilliant. And you get to hold a party with all of your crew members.
Okay. Which
just gives some really nice character stuff where you get to hang out with them. There's even more jokes, because it can be quite funny when it wants to be as well, Mass Effect. There's a lot of jokes at its own expense as well sometimes. There's some good gags in here about you pick your squad at one point, and whoever it is that you have least selected in your run through will be like, oh, I never seem to get picked. Suck it, Kaizen, and you never will. And it was genuinely some very funny gags, some great character moments, one that properly just came out of nowhere and made me laugh lots, I can't spoil it, but was really, really good. And it just felt like a really nice thing to bring the characters back in, but it did make me realise how little it felt like the characters mattered in this one compared to the previous one, where everything was about your crew and your relationship with them.
Excuse me. I've lost my voice not talking for so long. I'm back. So in terms of the divisive ending then, obviously you can't give that away or anything like that.
Well, I've got a spoiler-free version.
Okay, yeah, cool.
So the reason it's divisive is because it feels like your choice. Well, from my opinion, it feels like your choices previously, which always mattered up until now, don't seem to matter as much. You kind of get 3 options: 2 if you haven't done something, but 2 or 3.
Yeah,
and they're the same, and you could still do either. It doesn't, because you were more Renegade or more Paragon or whatever you did in your playthroughs and which races you saved or condemned, doesn't make a difference to the endings that you get, really. It might make a difference to the ending that you feel is right for you. I actually felt that none of the endings really matched what probably my Shepherd would have done either. When I was quite moral and everyone together, they all felt a bit like...
It's always a problem, isn't it, with these things, especially when you get so invested and then you become the character and made all the decisions, and then it kind of feels like some of it gets taken out of your hands and you're a bit like, that's not me, that's not what I would have done.
Yeah, and your crew get written out quite early as well, so like there's a bit where you go in with your squad, and there's a few bits throughout the series where you'll do a couple of bits alone because, oh no, a door has shut and Shepherd has to go off alone to do whatever it is, and then they'll reunite later with the rest of them. There was another bit like that, but it felt quite obvious that it was like, oh, I guess that was like the final fight.
Yeah.
And then I just felt a bit like, oh, so I'm now sort of stuck between just waiting for a few cutscenes and a couple of final choices.
Yeah.
Felt like your crew really weren't as involved, which again is quite a shame because it is just sort of you at the end. It's a minor spoiler, but like at one point you tell the crew that you brought with you basically like, no, I'm doing this alone. They're all sort of like, all right. Like by this point I'd like, been full on the romance with Garrus, who was like, ride or die, like great space bro, and he's just like, okay, see you later. I don't think that really fits with the whole... like his whole thing was being like really loyal, and it just felt like a bit...
Just expected a little bit more from you, Garrus, at the time.
Well,
You could have fed my fish.
Maybe that's what it was going back to do. It's like, hey Shepherd, I know what you want more than anything. I'm going to do it right now.
I'm going to go do some space admin for you.
Maybe that's it. I mean, that is the key to my space Shepherd's heart, that's for sure. And and at the end as well, like the sort of decision, it was actually not very well labelled. And again, ADHD, I wasn't really listening that well to the person who was telling me the options. And then it's like, you basically have to walk to a place to make your decision. And I'm like, I was sat looking at Richard being like, I don't remember which direction is which.
No. And even then, didn't you end up getting kind of caught out because you walked towards one and then realised the hard way that you'd been locked into it from
I thought you'd have to like
away.
Push something, like everything else you click to press a button or whatever it is. And this one, I just went a little bit too close to it, and it was like, right, you're doing this thing now. That's your ending. So I think the endings themselves, regardless of what you think of the endings, it also is very abrupt in the original. So I think from what I've read, the original just sort of has you do the ending, and that's kind of it.
Yeah.
And again, there's no real closure. So the DLC stuff that's in the Legendary Edition brings in this extra bit of ending where it does do a bit more of a kind of bit afterwards that's more like what was the consequence of that beyond what you got told it was. And what happens to some of your characters as well. So you get a couple of little, nothing big, but a couple of little sort of stills and things showing some of them who've survived, what they're up to.
I love that so much. That's like such
Charlie graduated from high school.
Such a trope. Now lives in Brooklyn in a 1-bed apartment. Happy.
But I think it was just for such an arc where you've been so invested in your characters and they were so well like put together. Just to have the end be like, well, here's a random selection of 3 and off you go, and that's kind of boom. So I see why the DLC came in, where they sort of were almost apologising to everyone by giving you this like send off that hadn't happened at the end. And like, I mean, it's no spoiler to say also that things can work out really badly for you, not every Shepherd gets out alive either, so I guess it is hard to do an ending if that's an option, but I just felt the ending really sucked the wind out of my sails in a way that on the one hand does emphasise how much I enjoyed the run through, but I'm not sure I've ever been more disappointed by a game ending.
Wow.
I think it would have been interesting to have been able to compare it, at least for your playthrough, like to back in the day when that Citadel DLC came out after the game.
Well, yeah.
Because the game, correct me if I'm wrong, the game finishes and then kind of does that thing where it puts you back to just before the point of no return.
I think it does, yeah.
So the DLC coming out would have felt more like a kind of epilogue type, oh, well, this happened before the end, you know, gap filling in thing, but felt to you as a player more like a send-off. Whereas seeing you play it through in the kind of narrative order and how much you enjoyed that little set of stories and then having the come down to the ending, I think is quite telling.
Hey, it's like how disappointing it must be for the game developers to get to that point where they feel that themselves as well, from the almost, I guess, a shock that is kind of go, oh, this is the idea that we've got and we've put this out there, and everyone, by the sound of it, everybody kind of goes, yeah, is that what you wanted to do? And then
I guess, like, for me, it's that there's a reason that Mass Effect 2 is routinely in that kind of best game ever kind of conversation, and that is because, like you said, like the crew's there, the decisions are there, and the ending ties all of that together thematically, and it stands. Whereas I can imagine that if you've, you know, it's one thing doing it within one game and being able to get an ending. I think it's quite another to be able to scale that up across 3.
Yeah,
and I mean, half the disc would have been endings. You know, if you were doing it justice for the number of like routes you could have gone down. Yeah. So I do see how like the technology might have limited things a little bit, and you know, I've never had to try and write an ending for anything like that, but writing an ending is hard at the best of times for anything.
Yeah, it's true. So it just feels like they would have known I don't know. That is difficult, yeah, you said that, because they would never have known the experience that every single player would have had either. That is, so therefore it's like,
you can only guess, can't you? Really? Like,
I was thinking there. I've been thinking a lot about this, and like, I was thinking a couple of things would have fixed it for me. I think having your crew with you at the end, or at least nearer the end, would have fixed it for me.
Something that had so much party, you know, play in it and stuff, and especially for yourself as well. Like, you know, all the games you've come to the podcast to review have been like, you know, these mass party games that you kind of get your Final Fantasy 15s and stuff, and you know, and the 7 remakes and things that is in, you know, like, it's clear that you like those dynamics. So to have that stripped away from you at the end after going through 2.95% of a game, you know, of games, that is in that would mean a lot to you.
It did. And the DLC again, like, had this moment where you can, a mild spoiler, but you still have to keep your posse of 2, but actually you see that everyone else is with you in the background, and they're like, you hear them in your comm and stuff, and that's really, really cool. Something like that at the ending would have been very good. I admit, probably difficult because they don't know who's dead or not, but they managed it for the DLC. And then I think the other thing that would have satisfied me more would have been even just 2 endings, or, you know, just a really simple branch of it. Kind of doesn't matter a lot of because a lot of the background stuff kind of got resolved by that point. You know, you've seen the consequences of your actions. So I think it was more about the Renegade and Paragon stuff was such a big deal. Yeah, let's just have a thing where, you know, your choices lean you towards an ending that's this or this, rather than you get free choice. Yeah. Or there's something where your companions that you've helped more closely will step in to offer you one of the, even if they gave me the same choices, but my companions had been there, and one of them said, actually, Shephard, you really helped me during this bad time. I think you should go for this. Just something like that just brought a bit more of your choice in, even if it was technically artificial and window dressing, would have made it feel more like it mattered. But maybe that's what they wanted to do. Maybe they wanted a really bleak kind of didn't matter what path you took to get here, you were still going to have the same sucky choice, because that's just life sometimes. But it's just a downer after what's quite... It's a fun game despite it having some really bleak moments.
But I would... That's the kind of ending I like in stuff,
know you
right?
Like that
I like that. I like that ending. But like the thing is that it's got to earn it, right? Like that. That's got to be like the seeds for that have to be sown all the way through it. Yeah. And like the themes of the rest of the Mass Effect 3, let alone the entire trilogy, do not suggest that. No. So
it's more of a rug pull than it is. It's going to go
exactly.
this way,
and that's when it starts to feel cheap. But if it's signposting it, subtly, considerably earlier, then sure, it could work. But there was never anything to suggest that it was going to go that way. So I think I basically think they wrote themselves into a bit of a corner with the ending. But that's me.
So. It's difficult to say that, isn't it? Because I know we spoke earlier about saying, well, how would you score this? Would you do it together? You do it separately and stuff. But they all sound like different entities. I mean, firstly, thank you for that, Fiona. That was really, really cool. I really enjoyed that.
Did you enjoy your nap?
Yeah. No, I didn't actually. I was really on the edge of my seat for a lot of it. I think I don't know. I always find it difficult whenever I listen to anyone else's game reviews and stuff. When I'm kind of like, oh, does that make me want to go away and play that? But I really do feel like that has made me want to go and play a game that isn't necessarily a game trilogy that isn't necessarily something that would be in my wheelhouse. Even just to see what the end's like now, even if it is something I'm like, that was a bit shit. But like,
at least you brace.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. But from all the different things that are in there, that was comprehensive and really cool, man. So, it's up to you guys how you you've played it. As in, would you think it deserves to have something where it's like, you score it separately because they're all different entities, or because it is so intrinsically entwined that decisions you make from 1 to 3 do affect each other so much? Do you just give it one big lump?
Well, I know how I would play it.
I think one big lump, because realistically that's how you're going to play it these days.
Okay.
I think given that the package is there,
that's a really
it's
good
got all
point.
the stuff in.
Yeah.
I think if you were to score them individually, I think for me, like Mass Effect 2 is kind of the winner. I'll let you give me your overall score.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's the kind of thing where, like you said, Mass Effect 1 walked so the rest could run. Mass Effect 2, like, holy hell, like that is quite the achievement. Yeah. It really is. And then Mass Effect 3 does feel like it kind of sits between the two.
Yeah.
So in my head, it's almost like Mass Effect 1 would be a 7, 2 would be a 9, and 3 would be an 8. It's that kind of thing. I think it's kind of awkwardly placed as a sort of a bundle, because I think if they were selling them separately, I can imagine Mass Effect 2 would sell like absolute fucking hotcakes, and then the others would just barely get a look in. So I think for me it's that kind of, well, is it an 8 or is it a 9? And I think they perhaps still could have done some, like, gone a little bit further with this particular release with some of those quality of life things, and revisited a couple of bits, and maybe Whisper It even retooled Mass Effect 3's ending very slightly. Like they had an opportunity to revisit it a little bit and didn't, and could have worked in some of the Citadel DLC stuff so it happens that little bit later in the story, and it's part of that
lump in before it.
They could have toyed with it. I appreciate there would be a lot of people that would be like, but this isn't the original experience, this isn't what I wanted. But I think, considering how it was received originally,
I was going to say, will there be that many people?
Well, I imagine there'd be a really strong argument for revisiting it. So I think all that considered, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. But with the huge caveat that Mass Effect 2 still very much stands as probably one of the greatest games of all time. And I think for me personally, the other two are a little bit of a drag on it.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, that sounds... I had that number in my head. I just don't want to say it out loud in case it offended anybody. But yeah, I had sort of from that an 8, so I think that's a good consensus then, I think, really. That's really cool. So my review... No, I'm not actually going to do one else. I mean, I do have a game here, but I'm not going to do it in the next 3 minutes.
I'm so sorry, Fazz.
No, don't apologise, it's fine. No, I genuinely really love that. I think that... I was going to ask you guys, while I've got you together for a quick 2 minutes, just like, because Rich mentions it really quite often, and I've not really heard it from your mouth, Fiona, about how much co-op campaign you you love, and you always say that the trope of Harrison Ford playing, like my wife, like you always say, like how much you enjoy playing through things together. I've been playing a little bit of Sniper Elite Resistance in the last week or so with my friend Nath from Carlisle, but I've only played co-op campaign, and I really enjoyed just having that experience. And I just wanted to get your take on things that Rich always says. It's so one of the important things about some of the games that he's enjoyed is that you guys have played together, and like how important that is to you. I guess together as a couple, that is in.
Shall I cover my ears?
You can give a shit answer if you want to.
No, I think we've done a few things co-op, and when we were both living in different places, we did a lot more stuff. Like GTA Online was quite a big one.
It's definitely dropped off a bit now that we're living in the same place at the same time.
But the thing is, I tried to get into GTA 5 myself, and I just kind of couldn't. And the enjoyment for me was like piling into it with you and just doing really stupid stuff like learning how to fly a plane
On
with
your
a
way to the
YouTube
airport.
video on the way to the airport.
That was fun.
Because I hadn't got to that point in the actual game, and someone had assigned me as the pilot. Sorry, whoever you were. That was a mission fail.
You weren't Shepherd at that point, though. That was like
I was not Commander Shepherd. But we've also done stuff that's not technically co-op as co-op. So like
like Bioshock.
Yeah. We went through the whole trilogy, I think, kind of passing over the controller, which was kind of fun.
That's cool.
Although it does transpire that, like, one of us like setting things on fire much more than the other one. So there were some arguments about upgrades.
Yeah.
That's me. I like setting things on fire.
Yeah, you've got the pyro upgrade than Bioshock. So
Why wouldn't you?
Yeah. Now, would you, with that in mind, then, is this Mass Effect something that you could do that with? Could you pass control over on this or not? Because there's so many different because you're different.
Absolutely
people.
not.
No, you couldn't. Yeah,
I think you have to be your own shepherd.
Yeah.
I don't think you want someone. Wouldn't want someone undermining your relationship with the lady who's going to feed you fish. For example.
Exactly. And, I mean, weirdly, like I toyed with going back to play Mass Effect a couple of times, and I've never done it because I was there originally. I played through the games as they came out and all that kind of stuff. I feel like my Shepherd story is done.
Okay.
Like I weirdly, it almost feels like it would be a bit of a betrayal to go back and redo any of it. And if I was going to do that, I would want to go in, play one specific game as a very deliberately, like you're doing with the Renegade run, like very, very deliberately, very different, but very much not my Shepherd. Like it would not be, the guy I went through that trilogy with. And I think if you're talking about the kind of games where you're going to have that kind of a connection with the character you're playing as, unless you've got something like a Baldur's Gate or something like that where you can both be doing that, then I think it would be very, very difficult. If it's bad enough that we're going to bicker over upgrades for like characters in Bioshock, which by comparison is reasonably straightforward, I think you start scaling up to something like a Mass Effect or beyond, like it's going to be very difficult to agree on how you approach character stuff.
Yeah, I think if you get to be the character, and like, which is weird, isn't it? Because like Shepherd, one of the things I really liked about Shepherd was that Shepherd is consistently Shepherd, regardless of whether you're playing male, female, Paragon, Renegade.
Yeah, it's slightly different variations on a theme, isn't it?
Yeah, but you can see it being a person that's having a difficult day doing one thing versus a person who's feeling more generous doing another, and it's the same person, but you still feel like it's your character. And I think Baldur's Gate's quite good because we could both be our own characters, which again does lead to some disagreements about how to proceed.
Yeah, of course it does. But that's half the fun of it.
But it's half the fun. So I think if you're going to do it with swapping controllers, it's got to be like your generic blank. Like, can you tell me anything about the guy in Bioshock? Like, he had that tattoo. That was it. That was his character. Had tattoo. Was lost underwater.
Good jumper.
Nice cable knit. But I think that's kind of the key. Keep it simple for that stuff, or find something that's proper co-op.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Thank you for that. So I last time we ran this long, I lost my Rayman Legends review, so we're just going to cut it. Just going to cut it nice about it. You've had 3 games tonight, guys. So
sorry, I won't come back.
So thanks very much, guys. Thank you again, Fiona, and we will speak to you again soon.
Cheers.
Bye.